Salutations, this is Basic Public Speaking, and this is the video lesson for the transitions, which includes introductions, conclusions, and transitions within the speech. Now, there is a Word document and a PowerPoint presentation, and there's examples within the PowerPoint presentation of introductions and transitions and conclusions, what we discuss here in this video lesson. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. When you begin first is pretty straightforward, an introduction. It doesn't matter if it's public speaking or if you're writing, creating a summary, whatever the case may be here, there's always an introduction. Just like when you do different not syllabus, but if you outlines and whatnot, there's always an introduction. Hello, I am, hello, you're just informing the audience of what they're getting ready to listen to or read or participate in, whatever the case may be. You're introducing your subject or yourself or someone else. All right. So there's a few basics when it comes to introductions on what happens or should happen in the realm of public speaking. Before we even begin speaking, your audience, if you're in a general assembly or a classroom setting or a work setting or collegiate, whatever the case may be, the book discusses and talks about how, and this is kind of in everyday life as well, you make assumptions off of people, how they present themselves. And as much as I hate, the old adage, you can't judge a book by its cover, which really you should not judge a book by its cover, but the appearance goes along with credibility, building credibility. If, say you're visiting a college or you're with a family member who's visiting a college, they have, I know Morehead State calls them SOARs, and that's where you go. You're starting school, you go, and there's a few different speakers from maybe different organizations at the school, like student government, or just like I said, just different organizations, or maybe it's from different colleges. They just come and they speak to you. Like generally you hear from a few students that tell you about their experience and why that particular school is where you want to go. And then you could divide off into, if you know what degree you're seeking, you may break off into groups for that degree and that particular college. And then you may hear from students in that program as well. And it could be students maybe top of their class, or if there's activities or groups in that program, perhaps they are representatives of that program. So you hear from them. So when you speak, when they're speaking to you, they're generally presenting themselves in a more put together sense. As I'm saying this, it's thoughtful picking out of what they're presenting themselves and what they wear. They're not showing up in a pair of like booty shorts and a tube top, or they're not showing up in negligees, or they're not showing up in some beat up old, pair of jeans and a tank top. They're presenting themselves in more of a, I don't want to say authoritative, but in more of a formal, semi-formal, business casual style. That's what we're talking about with first impressions when it comes to speeches. Now think, if you were to watch a presidential speech, or election seasons are thick with presenters, political figures running for whatever office they're running for, and it's local too, you're probably going to pay more attention to the speaker that has presented themselves in a more formal fashion than per se someone who's wearing their bathing suit and telling you why we need to work on this educational system or work on this road system or, climate change. That's what we're talking about here. So that's what the lesson in the book starts with, but then we build up. There's 3 basics to an introduction. What do I mean by this? It's to establish goodwill. If you see me looking off, I have notes to my computer, notes in the book, notes to the side here. So it's establishing goodwill. And the book describes this as: an introduction should establish a general sense that you care about the audience and have a thought about them in advance of your speech. So you're just creating a sense of, or the speaker is creating a sense of, I'm here for you. This speech has your best interests at heart. I have your best interest in mind for this outcome, whatever the case may be. The second it talks about is establishing credibility. Now, establishing credibility not only can happen in the introduction, it also happens along with the conclusion. But in introduction, this is where you establish authority as a speaker. This is where you will say directly or indirectly that you are qualified as a speaker and can be trusted. We'll we delve into that a little bit later lesson. And then lastly, they talk about you're explaining why you're speaking. This is where the audience learns your purpose. This is expressed in a thesis statement. And we dive deeper into, well, we talked about it with speech, topic, and purpose. Your thesis statement. In the case of this course, I give you the genre: informative, celebratory, storytelling, persuasive. You get to pick your topic and you get to pick your purpose, or a thesis statement. And a thesis statement is a more direct explanation of what you're going to talk to us about or what you're trying to accomplish with your speech. So say it's a persuasive speech and your topic is persuasive speech. You choose your purpose, or your thesis statement is to convince the audience why shorter school weeks are beneficial, or why a school day should be shorter, or perhaps, adapting to a year-long schedule, as some countries do. They take so many weeks on, so many weeks off, so many weeks on, so many weeks off, as opposed to where here in the United States, we get 2 weeks off in the winter and then we get several months off in the summer. It's just kind of extending breaks, the benefits, or why we should have a turn lane here, or why roads should be wide here. The thesis and purpose of your speech, that statement, is a more direct what you're getting ready to talk to us about. It could be you're telling us how to make the most delicious brownies in the world, or how to build the best cheeseburger, or why McDonald's is superior to Wendy's, or why this pizza place has the best pizza, or why this is the best city to visit. Whatever the case may be, it's just a more direct, the thesis statement purpose is just a more direct what you're telling us. Okay. With that, I did something crazy on my computer. Watch out, world. So let's go ahead and get into, we already talked about, this is what your introduction does. So we're building credibility, we're building a goodwill, and we're just kind of discussing what we're going to talk about. You're getting a preview. Think of it. You go to the movies, and there's previews before movies. And some streaming services give you previews for upcoming shows or series that they're doing before showing you, before you're watching the film or the series that you watch on that series. So think of it as previews. You're giving us a nice little preview. With that being said, in the introduction, an attention grabber is amazing, or attention getter. And there's many ways that you can get attention to pique your audience interest. So you can have a straight quotation, which is opening your speech with a memorable quotation from a respected speaker or a writer. So you're gaining credibility and you're giving structure to your speech. Excuse me. Then there's acknowledging the speaking situation. This comes in handy too, especially with celebratory speaking. If you're speaking at a special event that is honoring a certain person or certain people, or celebrating an occasion, or explaining the complexity of an event, making reference to the person, the occasion, or the event can unite the audience in a common purpose. So think of like memorial speeches or a tribute. You're giving honor to the specific person. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my recording device here. You know, today we are here in honor of, you know, Betty White passed away last year, and there was a lot of in memory of Betty White. That's what we're talking about. It's acknowledging whom you're speaking of. Or if you're an event, think of a graduation. You acknowledge that you're here as a graduating class of insert year. If you're giving a wedding toast, you're acknowledging the celebration, the marriage of the couple. You know, from your point of view, you may know one side more so than the other, or maybe you're the one that got the couple together, but you're acknowledging the occasion, and that's the marriage. Birthday parties, if you talk at birthday parties, you're acknowledging that person. So far we got quotations and we've got acknowledging the speaking situation. Then there's the rhetorical question. Rhetorical questions are questions that is voiced, and it's presumed that the speaker knows the answer, but it's never outright spoken, the answer. It's more of that gets the audience thinking. So those are some ways to get attention. Other ways is visualization. This is kind of related to the rhetorical question, attention grabber, but it asks the audience to imagine a scenario or a scene in their minds. One of my favorite examples of this, if you've ever watched Golden Girls, think of every time, picture this, Sicily, 1912. And then Sophia goes forth in her description. That's a visualization. And it's a great example of visualization. Then there's telling a story or a joke. You can organize your entire speech around a story, which we do kind of when we do the storytelling speeches. And sometimes you can just begin with a story or a joke. Using humor kind of breaks the ice, breaks the tension, and allows the audience to relax a little bit more and open themselves up to actively listen to the speaker, which we talk more about active listening later on. And then you can kind of also use a startling fact or a statistic. This is just telling a fact or relay a statistic that's not widely known or commonly known, but supports the purpose of your speech. So you could, you know, give a statistic. Every 4 minutes, this happens. As we speak, there will have been The book gives a great example for this, and I'm going to use the book's example because it's a really great example. Sadly, in the next 18 minutes, when I do our chat, 4 Americans that are alive will be dead through food that they eat. My name's Jamie Oliver. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Essex in England, and for the last 7 years, I've worked fairly tirelessly to save lives in my own way. Jamie Oliver. They use his speech as examples throughout this text, but that tells you that's a scary statistic. And if you think of truth commercials, they use statistics, you know, about smoking, about using Juuls, all that falls under it. Or the commercials where they want you to adopt the ASPCA or adopt a child or send money to this organization. They use of statistics and numbers fall into that as well. So those are ways that we can get attention. So again, there's quotations, acknowledging your speaking situation, a rhetorical question, visualization. Those can kind of go hand in hand. Telling a story or a joke to break the ice or break the tension, or startling fact or statistic. So we've got our attention. We moved into the thesis statement. And as I said before, this is a more direct what you're getting ready to say. It's an expression of your topic and why you're speaking about it. It kind of sets up the parameters of your speech, the thesis statement does. And it's an oral cue, a listening cue for your audiences to help them organize the speech in their heads. Because by nature, we organize in our head. And we organize differently. Everybody does. But we organize in some way or shape or form in our minds. That's why numbers are set up the way they do, like phone numbers and stuff. It's because of memorization. Anyway, the final component of the introduction of the speech is the place or moment in which you give your preview to the audience. So you've opened up your speech. You've begun. You've gave your attention grabber. You kind of go into your thesis statement again. And then we're just kind of, really, we're going to tidy it up. We're going to preview. And that really, I mean, that it hand in hand with your thesis statement in the world of your oral presentation is you're giving the audience a little snippet of what they're going to really listen to. And this activates active listening for your audience. Okay. So let's move into transitions, and that's your middle part. Now, we've said a few times, and we'll say it again, there's like this magic number in speeches, and it's 3. 3 points, 3 speaking. You can do more. I wouldn't suggest more than 5, but going less and you're really not explaining or putting yourself out there the way that's going to coincide. So in sense of public speaking, transition refers to the way in which a speaker indicates movement from one point of the speech to another. I mean, remember, we got our attention, we gave our preview of what we're going to talk about. Now we're just going to hit our points. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. There's enumeration, and this is where you just basically say, so for my first point, blah, 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 blah. Now my second point, blah, 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 blah. My third, enumeration. You are saying out loud the numbers. 1, 2, 3. You know, think of it too if you are watching a cooking show or you're telling somebody how to make something. You may go, okay, first thing you need to do, you're gonna make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. First thing you need to do is get 2 slices of bread. Second, you need to gather your peanut butter, your jelly, and what devices you use to spread them with. Spoon, fork, knife, whatever the case, spatula, whatever the case may be. You know, third, take 1 slice, you know, and then you go into detail. But you're doing enumeration. You're giving a verbal step-by-step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there's, along with enumeration, there's eternal previews and eternal summaries. And these are details of transition that review major points. So you give a point, review the point, go forth. It's shorter than the preview we give in the introduction, and you're just kind of summarizing what you said. Okay, so now after step 1, you will have gotten your 2 pieces of bread. So moving on to step 2, you get your peanut butter, your jelly, and your device to spread with, or devices. So now that you have your devices and your ingredients, now we can move into step 3, which is spreading the ingredients. See what I'm doing there? If it's done within the speech, it's internal previews and summaries. So it's kind of like the introduction where we did a preview, but it's a smaller, like little, think of it, Cliff Notes. That's transitions, really, really quick. So introduction, we have our attention grabber, and you're given a preview, and then you have your main body of transitions. You can do enumeration where you literally just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you also have eternal previews and internal summaries, which are just, we're going to do this, and we just did this, much smaller version. You don't have to use enumeration from like 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't, that is not a requirement. You can just do your points. Usually if you're just doing points, that's when you really see the internal previews and summaries come into play, because it's a way of transitioning from point to point to point, you know. So we're making candy. We're making peanut butter balls. You know, you want to gather your ingredients. Your ingredients are peanut butter, powdered sugar, chocolate for melting. Once a bowl to, you know, or this. Once you've gathered your ingredients, then you want to set up your stations. You know, mixing, ball rolling, dipping, all that. So that's where the internal previews and summaries really come into play, especially when you're not using enumeration. Now let's wrap it up, folks. Conclusions. Conclusions, basically, it's the function, it's it's to wrap it up, to say thank you. Well, not necessarily out loud say thank you, but it's signaling to your audience that we are done. It's, in a sense, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Now, if you think about films and television shows, or older films and television shows, there was usually a signal that it was the end of the film. You know, you're watching a film, the conclusion, the guy gets the girl, the bad guy gets caught, everybody gets their happy ending, all wrapped up in a pretty package. Or you think of like old Looney Tune cartoons, and Porky Pig would sign it off, that's all, folks. That is a visual cue. It's over. Or some would just put like, finish, the end, Or some shows have musical cues. Oh, it's the end of the episode. Maybe not necessarily the story, but it's the end of the episode. It was wrapped up all nice and tidy. When it comes to the conclusion, you can end it in some of the same ways that you use an introduction. You know, it could be a statistic, it could be a story, it could be a joke, it could be, you know, all that falls into place to finish it off. Or, here now we are at the conclusion of our speech, and you will have learned how to make the best cheeseburger, or how to make the perfect game day wings. You are just, when you get to the conclusion, so that you're summarizing it and you're reiterating your thesis. So let's wrap that up real quick. You have introduction, you get your attention grabber, your thesis preview world. Then you go into transitions. You can do it by numbers, or you can do it point by point, where you use internal summaries and reviews. And then you're going to wrap it up. You're going to say why you talked about, and why it was important. And then you're going to sign off. Thank you so much. It's been real. It's been wonderful. News reporters. A lot of news reporters have sign-offs. Ron Burgundy, that Keep It Classy Chicago. It's just, you're reiterating, you're repeating what you said throughout your main body of your speech. And you want to leave it on a note, maybe you've lost your audience to part of the speech. You're bringing them back. Hey, this is why you needed to pay attention. This is what you're getting from the speech. This is the information that you're getting. And like I said, you can use a lot of the techniques that are used in the introduction. Acknowledging why you're there. Acknowledging the situation. Visualization, stories, jokes, all that can fall in there. You're wrapping it up. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you get anything from this video lesson on transitions, it's just do your introductions, and you can attention grabbers, and there's a multitude to choose from. Then you have your thesis world and a preview. You're going to tell us what you're going to talk about, why we need to listen, why it's important, because you've set up credibility and goodwill, and this is why we need to listen to you. Then we're going to move into the speech itself, where we have transitions. That's enumeration. You can do it by letter, like in step 1, in step 2, in step 3, or point, or just talking your points, but then you have internal summarization and summaries, and it's really just a snippet preview and a snippet follow-up, and then you're going to come to your conclusion. You can use the same techniques, or some of the same techniques you use in the front one, but you're bringing the audience back on why it was important that they, the importance of the speech. Wrap it up pretty. You're just summarizing your thesis, and it's just wrapping it up real pretty in a box. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the lesson on transitions, introductions, and conclusions. Thank you so much. Bye.